It all started on January 21st, 2009, when I got a phone call from my doctor and told me out of the clear blue that I had cancer. And it was just out of the clear blue. I had no idea that they were even testing for cancer. I was told it was an incurable form, uh, treatable, but, something you live with the rest of your life. And, I called that moment a call. And one of the things that happened to me is I read an article about a gentleman who had died from heart disease, and he said that he was grateful, and he had lasted 6 months, and he was grateful for the time because it gave him time to fix things. He said it was unlike his friends who had died in Vietnam or who had died in a car wreck or from a heart attack. He had time to make things right. And yeah, it really resonated with me.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about real tactics to navigate our toughest days. I'm delighted to welcome Glenn Sturm. Glenn is an author, astrophotographer, soldier, lawyer, and survivor. You can reach Glenn at his website, glennturm.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Glenn. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Well, thank you, Linda, for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
I'm just so impressed by you with all of the skill set that you have. You are a top attorney, a military leader, and an advocate for cancer patients. And this transition came because of your experience. Do you want to share how that came to be?
Well, yeah, well, first off, I'm hoping to set the record for the longest duration cancer patient because I've now got over 6,500 days of oral chemo and over 500 days of IV. But it all started on January 21st, 2009, when I got a phone call from my doctor while I was at the Atlanta airport getting ready to go give a speech, and told me out of the clear blue that I had cancer and that they needed to see me the next day at the hospital, at her offices to do more biopsies. And it was just out of the clear blue. I had no idea that they were even testing for cancer. And, it was amazing. I was told it was an incurable form, uh, treatable, but, something you live with the rest of your life. And, I called that moment a call. What happened then was about 2 weeks of confusion and trying to understand everything. And one of the things that happened to me is I read an article about a gentleman who had died from heart disease, and he said that he was grateful, and he had lasted 6 months, and he was grateful for the time because it gave him time to fix things. He said it was unlike his friends who had died in Vietnam or who had died in a car wreck or from a heart attack. He had time to make things right. And yeah, it really resonated with me about, I've been working so hard for so long that, I was going to have time. But, you're still in a kind of quasi state of shock. And so that weekend, my family lived in Jackson, Wyoming. And I was going to make my second trip after the diagnosis out. And so I got off the plane and going down and hit black ice. I was the first one off the plane, slipped, and there was a loud pop. And I'm laying on the tarmac and I'm sitting there saying, oh my gosh, what else do I have to deal with? And I remember something my daughter said to me. This conversation happened about she'd had a car wreck in her new car. And, I had, probably pushed the issue too much. And she said at the time, Dad, the ambulance is gone. You can't fix that. And I was laying on the tarmac and I said, basically, the ambulance is gone. Follow your daughter's lead and get off your tail, get up, and make life better for you and others. And that event of laying on the tarmac was probably the pivotal issue that changed how I've approached everything since then. I got up, and the fun thing about it was that I went to the hospital. They did an MRI, and the diagnosis was I had, quote, this is where they used something more colorful. I had terrible knees. And that was the diagnosis, terrible knees. Well, it turned out that I had a torn ACL in my right
Oh,
knee. And so then I had to have surgery and rehab the knee. And that was one of the positive things that happened in the whole process. And if we want to talk about the good things that happened was, I said, I'm not going to let cancer define me. I'm going to, fight it as hard as you can fight it. And we'll just see how long I've got. But I'm going to make every day for as long as I've got, as good as you can imagine. So
wow.
that was how it started.
Oh my
But,
gosh. Okay. Glenn, that was so incredible. What a story. I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. Here you're at the airport, you're off to go give a speech, and all of a sudden you're given something that it takes life and turns it in a completely different direction. I gotta ask, how did your speech go? Were you still able to give it, or did you say,
oh
whoa?
yeah, yeah, I gave it. I mean, I love public speaking, and I was always able to compartmentalize things. Uh,
Okay.
and so I compartmentalized it. One of the compartmentalizations I've done is I've gotten my treatments. I started at Smilow Cancer Center, Yale University Medical School, and I tell everybody that I lead cancer in New Haven, Connecticut. So
Leave it
when I
there.
go, yeah, leave it there. It's gone. I got to take medicine every day, but I leave it there. And, and people kind of look at me and say, "How do you do that?" And I said, "You put it in a box and you put it on the shelf. You don't worry about it. You maintain, you worry about your conditions, what's going on in your life. You worry about side effects, but you don't worry about cancer, and you just move on." And uh, being able to compartmentalize things is very helpful. It's not something everybody can do, but what helped me was about 2 weeks after the slip and fall on the tarmac, I went to see my yeah, internist, and he was concerned because of some other things going on in my life. My mentor had just died.
Hmm.
My dog had just died, and I'd been served with divorce papers.
Oh,
And
no.
so, yeah, and so he says to me, "Glenn, you really need to see a psychiatrist." And I said, "Oh, I'm okay." He said, "No, Glenn, you really need to see a psychiatrist." And this guy was really sharp, non-judgmental, and just a good guy, and a phenomenal physician. And so he said, "This is who you need to see. I'll arrange it. And if it doesn't help you, then I understand." Well, 17 years later, I'm still seeing her. But
Oh, good.
she turned out to be instrumental in helping me beat cancer fatigue syndrome, uh, because it really, that's what hit me the hardest. It was the worst side effect to start with. And which means I'd fall asleep in the middle of the day, uncontrollable sleep and stuff. So when we fixed that, we fixed cancer fatigue syndrome, and it also had a effect of eliminating any possibility of chemo brain.
Wait, wait, wait.
And
So how did you beat cancer fatigue syndrome? I missed what the
well,
secret was.
there's a medication. There are lots of medications for narcolepsy,
Okay.
and what happens is they give you energy that's like basically a constant energy drip for the whole day. And if you go online and look up narcolepsy and the best drugs for it, best
Okay.
medications for it, it'll show you the things to take. But that's what I did. And I've been on that medicine for over 17 and a half years now. And, I'm pretty active in what I do and get done every day. And if it wasn't for taking care of that issue, life might have been very different. If you look at the research reports today, there's a basically almost linear correlation between the quality of life that people have and their life expectancy. So the higher your quality of life, the longer you're going to live. Um, Now it's not that simple, but it's just trying to summarize it. And there's some extraordinary results from studies about this. The European Organization for Research and Treatment of Cancer did a study of 7,417 patients, and people who physicians who address quality of life issues as the paramount thing to do had a substantially better longevity for their patients than those who didn't. And so backdoor, I started putting together my own team of specialists. And then the next thing that happened is I had that badly torn ACL. I had to have physical therapy. And one of the few times the insurance companies I can say nothing but wonderful things. They approved physical therapy for me for over 9 years, 4 to 5 days a week. And my physical therapist took it upon herself to take pictures of my back where the cancer was presenting itself on the skin every week, and we sent it to my doc, and she'd send a note with it. So what we had is a total communications loop between somebody who was examining me every day, the psychiatrist who was helping me with worse, side effects, and my oncologist, who's a world-class oncologist. And by having that team together, which was augmented by other people, I had my first multidisciplinary, probably one of the first really truly multidisciplinary cancer care teams in the United States.
Really?
And as a result of that, all the studies are now showing that a multidisciplinary cancer care teams equates to materially longer survival rates. And so to prove this, my daughter, who is I have two daughters, but one of them is more into the medical stuff. Was told by my physician I probably had 2 to 2.5 years to live when I was diagnosed, and I'm now in my 18th year of chemo. And so I'm an example of what happens to multidisciplinary cancer care teams treatments. But there's a great study by William and Thompson, who was released last year with 56,187 patients. I think that's the exact number. And what it says was people with multidisciplinary cancer care teams live longer, and the mortality rate drops at the low end about 14% for people with that treatment. And at the high end, and I'm in the high end group, it reduces it by about 90%. So today, if you do a study on me, I've gone from having a 2-year life expectancy to a 30-year life expectancy now.
Really?
So,
that's what the prognosis is for you, is just keep on going.
Keep on going, keep the chemo going, keep in shape, and I work out 6 days a week, and do my thing and keep going, and don't let anything stop you. And so part of the whole thing is about knowing that only you can stop you, that nobody else can, knowing that you're responsible for your own the health conditions, and studying the disease, and then having a team that takes care of you, not an individual. And the statistics in this go on forever. My next book that comes out is A New Hope: The Incredible Success of Multidisciplinary Cancer Care Teams. It's actually stunning what happens. To give you an example on the cancer which gets the lowest improvement right now is breast cancer. And
Really?
so for the people who are metastatic breast cancer patients, that's because they've gotten so much, they've improved so much. The increase in the survival rate's up 14%. My cancer is up 90%. So that's the difference, because breast cancer, when it's metastasized, is very, very hard to control, and my cancer is easier to control. So I'm the lucky guy. So but it's kind of fun. I've now had 55 surgeries. So
Whoa! 55 surgeries for the cancer?
Yeah.
For what?
Well, it's the side effects from the cancer. So
55 over
5 detached retinas.
17 years?
Yeah, 5 detached retinas, torn retina, intestinal perforations of the intestine, sepsis, and things like that. I mean, it all were taken care of, and all did really well. You wouldn't know it. I mean, I had spine surgery in October, and after the call tonight, I'm going to go out and play golf. And I used to have a really good golf game. We'll see how it goes this year after the spine surgery. I've got a lot of work to do to get back to where I was. But again, only you could stop you. But I mean, I'm being interviewed all the time now about multidisciplinary cancer care. And, um, my new book that's coming out tells a lot of the history of what happened to me. But there are between 7 and 20 QR codes in the book. Those QR codes bring you memos about one is the evidence of linking quality of life to cancer survival. Another one is recent survival studies for patients following the multidisciplinary protocol. Another one is who is a complete, fully integrated multidisciplinary cancer care team? Who are the members of it? So I've written all these memos and they're in QR codes. And the reason I did that is people can click on the QR code and they can get the memo and read it, and then they can send it to somebody else. I want them to, because the whole point is increasing the educational life of folks, and making sure that they know what's available and how much help you can get from a protocol that's different. Because there are two groups that really don't like the multidisciplinary approach. The first one, I believe, and there's no evidence for this, it's just a belief, is the insurance companies. Because if you're supposed to die in 2.5 years and they're still paying for your chemo after 18 years, that kind of messes up the whole math of what costs are. And the second group is doctors who don't like multidisciplinary approaches. They like the siloed approach. They like to be the one who's in charge of all aspects.
Oh,
But the
okay.
math is so compelling that it has to change. And the multidisciplinary approach was really started in Australia 30 years ago and migrated to Europe 25 years ago. And the results are just staggering.
That's fantastic.
It is. And so, but the other things are your own attitude about it. So there are some phrases I like about this. We must all give up hope for a better yesterday. You can't change where you are. You can change the future. It put a smile on somebody's face every day. And sometimes that's hard in Jackson, Wyoming, in the wintertime because you don't interact with people. We've got like 4 feet of snow coming, and you can't get out there. So the only person you can do that with is somebody on a call center. And the only way you put a smile on their face and you get them to laugh. So you say something funny about yourself and they'll laugh. And you can check the box for getting that done today. But by doing that, you're helping somebody else have a better life and you're helping yourself. So if you concentrate on helping others, it helps you.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. And so that's the kind of approach you take. And then, learn about your disease and learn about what the side effects are. When I had the intestinal issue, I didn't know it could be a side effect from the chemo. When I had liver failure, I had to figure it out myself by doing math called correlation coefficients to figure out what was the cause. And I was told once I figured it out that correlation doesn't equal causation. And the correlation coefficient was 0.96, which is perfect correlation is 1.
Right.
So 0.96 was about as high as it gets. And I said, well, we're going to figure this out because I quit taking that medicine that I think is causing this. Well, I was on the liver transplant list. And 9 weeks later, my liver enzymes were back to normal and I stopped the drug.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then I had, the enzyme problem with my stomach where I didn't know what caused it because I'd had some digestive issues earlier. But it turns out there's a paper on it by the NIH that says that about 50%, between 20 and 50% of patients who are on systemic long-term chemo are going to have this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the survival rate from that problem is about 50% because it's never caught quick enough. Again, if you have a team that's working with you all the time and they see something's not working right, guess what? You'll catch it early enough to stop it.
Right.
And then the most recent one was I had a detached retina and they fixed it. 30 days later, it detached again.
Oh, no.
And they did another surgery and then it detached again. And the doctors couldn't figure it out. And so I did the research and there 20% of systemic long-term cancer patients have significant ocular issues, including detached retinas. So I said, okay, we've gone to a new chemo and I said, we're changing that. and we changed it. And after the fifth detached retina surgery, and I stopped the chemo, I didn't have another one. So that's been about 8 years now.
Wait, you said
So
stop the chemo. What, like you're
stopped
not
it. That
taking
chemo,
that
no, we
particular one?
switched it. Yeah,
You
we switched
switched to
it.
a different one. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So I have a couple thoughts. One is I love the idea that quality of life increases survival because
Yep.
that is not only longevity, this is also uh, not just a longer life, but a better life. And isn't it
Absolutely.
wonderful to create such a win-win? When you're creating a better life, you're also increasing the length of your life. That is amazing. Um, I just love everything about that. So, and this is probably in your book, but I'm just wondering, how do you create a team? Let's say I am in the situation like you were, where I get a phone call or I've gone to the doctor, I find out that I have cancer, and now I've listened to Glenn, and I think, wow, if I just have one doctor helping me, my chances of survival are yay high. But if I can create a team to help me, then it's going to increase. And it seems like the most important person on your team is you, because no one
Correct.
cares about your health, your happiness, your success more than you do. So you have been very proactive in creating that, but it sounds like you have such a beautiful synergistic team where this one who's checking you all the time is communicating with that one. So how did you orchestrate
Well,
and make that happen?
well, I was a lawyer and doing big deals, and so to me it was normal to have a team because I'm doing a big transaction, $1 billion transaction or something, and um, I've got a tax lawyer, I've got a litigator, I've got an environmental lawyer, I've got all these lawyers with different specialties. So it's normal for me to have different specialties. And so once I had the psychiatrist involved and I had the physical therapist involved, we had other people get involved. So to me, it was a normal thing to do, but it's not normal for most people. So in my book, and I'll send you a copy of this. It's still in draft form, but
Wonderful.
it's called the Integrated Multidisciplinary Cancer Care Team, and it lists every profession that you need to have, that an institution should have available for somebody with cancer, and why. And they're people you've never heard of. Okay, I mean, for instance, have you ever heard of a computational oncologist?
No.
Okay, so who's that? Well, they're the ones who look at genomics and have the math aspects of cancer, and they can do correlation coefficients. That's a joke to them. It's so far beneath them. And then you've got everybody all the way down to a music therapist, an art therapist, a yoga instructor, and so there are over 50 people on a complete team. Now, who came up with that list? I did. Um, I was talking to my surgeon at Mayo, and he was talking, and I said, "When did you guys go to multidisciplinary?" Well, Mayo's known for having team approach forever, but not the term. And he said, "Glenn, who told you that?" And I said, "You just did, because you told me these following things, and that means you're doing multidisciplinary approach." And he said, "Well, the problem is who's on the team. How do you make up a team? What's the right team?" And I said, "Look in your inbox." And at the time, I had 40 people on the team. And he said, "Glenn, who drafted this?" I said, "I did." And he said, "How did you come up with this?" I said, "Look at the footnotes." And he looks at it, he said, this is amazing. He said, "I would never have thought of having a dentist on the team." And I said, "Yeah, it's the adrenal glands that can cause problems because of systemic chemo." And I'm not a doctor, okay, but you have to learn it. And if you don't learn it, you've got to have your caregiver may learn it, or somebody can help you and their team. So what I say in my book, and I've got a wonderful wheel of death on my Microsoft right now, but basically I say, here there are three memos that are at the front of this thing. The first is for the patient, the second is for a caregiver, and the third is for the institution. So you and the caregiver get together and look at it and say, well, does my hospital do this? Or my provider do this? And you have to ask them, do you do this? And my strong suggestion is when you ask them that question and they say, well, we don't offer that, you say, who does? Because I need to change my professions.
Mm.
Okay. And if nobody does it where you are, you have to put it together yourself. But here's a list of the people. Now, do you need all these people? No. But do you need the administrative people? They are really important because they have two roles. One is to make sure the communications protocols and processes occur. And second, that there's a multidisciplinary team meeting where they review your conditions with other professionals. And here's the thing. It's most people think of things as being black or white. I think it's like a ball. And you have to look at the ball from all angles. And when you look at it from all angles, guess what? You're going to find things differently. You have different perspective that you look at it. Well, once you've got that perspective, you're only halfway there. Because that's looking at the outside of the ball. You got to go on the inside of the ball. Well, most of the basketballs are orange, but if you go to the inside of the ball, they're black. Okay? You just need to look at all sides of the issue. That's what multidisciplinary teams do. So here are the statistics about the results of multidisciplinary teams on diagnosis and treatment protocols. Approximately 35% of the time, that's a plus or minus, it's not an exact number, the diagnosis has changed from the original diagnosis once the team has gotten together and reviewed it.
Whoa,
And
really?
another 35% of the time, the treatment protocols changed.
Okay.
So if you don't have a team, you're not going to get the benefit of this multi-looking methodology. And as a result of that, guess what? You might be misdiagnosed. You might not have the most effective protocol. So in the thing I say, is you've got to find somebody who does it. So to give you an example of how this impacts you is last fall, right when I was getting started in this, I figured it out, the impact of it. I don't know if will ever figure it out completely, but a family knows that I research this pretty hard and write books and stuff. They said, Glenn, our daughter was just diagnosed, she's 25, with metastatic stage 4 breast cancer. We would need to know what the best hospital in the country is. And so I said, okay, let me see what I can figure out. And so I went to work on it and did incredibly extensive research. And after about 2 days of the research project, the dad said to me, he said, Glenn, our daughter lives in California. And if there's anybody really, really good in California, they'll make it a whole lot easier. So I dug in deep, and it turns out, and I have never met anybody from this hospital, but it turns out that if you look at the University of San Francisco Medical Center's breast cancer team, they are a true multidisciplinary team. They do it the right way. It's not just verbal, not just they say they do it, they actually do it. And the results of their performance is staggering. How much better they are with their results than anybody else. They get it, they understand it, they work it. I mean, there are other good, places too. Mayo, I've never gone off the deep end on their research because they weren't in that part of California. But there are all sorts of phenomenal hospitals. But some people say they do multidisciplinary, they don't. And because if you don't have a team meeting, a multidisciplinary meeting, then you're not having it. And so to give you an example of how important it is, the communications process, when I was heading to Mayo about a month ago, I was sitting next to a cardiologist who's retired. We were starting talking and stuff. And I said, I'm writing these books on these things. And he said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm on my way to MD Anderson, which is my first time there, because I'm not happy with my existing provider. And I said, what happened? He said, well, there's an old methodology called tumor boards, where a physician will get up in front of a group of other physicians and say what his diagnosis is in the treatment protocol. But it's not a consensus building activity because they're telling him what they do. It's more educational. And the doctor, this is a really, really high class, well known doctor in the field, probably internationally. And he asked permission to listen in on the tumor board's meeting. And he said, silence my phone. I'm not going to ask any questions. I just want to listen. And they said, no,
Oh,
you can't do that. Well, okay, I can understand somebody, as a patient who doesn't have the medical background being told no, because they may not understand a lot of it. But this was a no to a world-renowned doctor. Well, it gets crazier than that, because in Australia and in Europe, and in some places in the United States, multidisciplinary meetings, which is the successor to tumor boards, the patient is encouraged to participate and be there, to
yeah.
know what all the options are. And now there's some doctors who don't mind doing that, but they want to have the last word. And in Europe, there's a province in Europe, in Germany, that has a statute that says the doctor must follow the multidisciplinary recommendation. I'm not in favor of that because, a personal example, when I was at Mayo last time, when I started this, I had 3 spots in my lungs and 4 on my spine, and there were cancer cells in my spinal fluid. So I went to Mayo, and I'm part of the executive health program. They checked everything out. So they sent me into a meeting with their lymphoma specialists, and they are world renowned and unbelievably good. But the fellow there, so it's like after residency, there's a fellowship sometimes. You have to be pretty special to get a fellowship at this place like Mayo. She looks at me and everything and said, I've never seen somebody who received your type of treatment. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, normally we would try to cleanse the cancer cells out of the blood flow. We'd do this and this before we went on chemo. And he said, you went on oral chemo the first day and you were on IV after that wasn't as successful, 8 months later. I said, yep. And the reason is my doc and I talked about it, and I said, I don't want to do this halfway. Let's try to nuke it. Okay. And, no cancer cancer group would probably say that's a normal way of doing it. Well, she's probably regarded as one of the best, if not the best, T-cell lymphoma doctors in the world. And so she had the confidence that I could handle it. And we did that, and that's probably the reason I'm alive today.
Oh,
But it'd be an unusual way of doing it, but it worked. Well, she's the wizard. Okay, well, you if you've got a wizard, you got to listen to the wizard. Well, in a multidisciplinary meeting, she'd go in there and say, well, Mr. Sturm said, nuke it. I'll handle the side effects. Well, in Europe, you can't do that.
oh, really?
You've got to follow the team's recommendation. Well, there's got to be a balance point there. But
For sure.
if you can't know what's going on, how can you consent to the treatment that they're
Right.
providing?
That bothers me, not being allowed. I have a question about the
Yes, ma'am.
team meeting, because you've talked about you have a team that includes 50 people,
Well,
but
well,
obviously a team meeting doesn't include 50 people.
well,
So who is
no,
invited to the team meeting?
well, here's the thing. I mean, first off, I don't think anybody will have more than 6 or 7 people.
Okay.
Okay. And there's some administrative people that are part of the team. But everybody's different on what they need, the spiritual needs, whether they need Reiki or other things. And, it just depends. So the principal oncologist will be there, other oncologists, hopefully your internist would be there. And then any of the specialists, like in my case, since I had cancer cells in my spinal fluid, you'd want the neurologist, the neuro cancer. And it just depends. It's the makeup is different every time. But the team that's available to you, could be up to 50 people, will probably be 6 or 7 at the most.
Okay.
You need a guide or somebody to help you weed through everything. Well, I ended up being my own guide, but I'm kind of
Right.
unusual. Um,
Well, is
and
there a guide? I mean, because you are amazing and special and write the books about it, but not everybody who is going through this experience is going to have what you bring to the table. So, is there
yeah, there are
someone?
guides. There are actually two types. There's a nurse practitioner guide, and then just a coordinator. But their job is to manage the side effects and make sure you get all your appointments and make
Okay.
sure you're taken
Okay.
care of. Okay, and you need that person. I mean, I managed it myself. I mean, um, I didn't know that such thing existed when I started. Um, and to give you an example how important they are, a friend of mine's wife ran the guide program at Duke's Cancer Center for a while, and they've increased the number of guides by 4x over
Oh,
the past 10 years. So, people get the importance of this. I mean, it's overwhelming when you get the call or you're told,
yeah.
uh, and you're in shock. And, um, it's just really completely overwhelming. But the guide helps that. And in my case, I had a wonderful daughter's line that, Dad, the ambulance is gone. Get off your tail and solve your problems. Uh, and that's just the way we are. My family's kind of different that way, I guess. But I mean, I'll give you a funny thing. When people ask how you're doing, that's not a question. It's a greeting.
Okay.
And if you want to be left alone, tell them how you're doing because
Oh,
they won't ask the question again. And it's just that's kind of joking, but it's true. But how are you is always a greeting. Well, when you have cancer, you think it's a you think it's a question, and it's really not. They just want you to say you're fine and move on, if that makes sense. And you know, it's part of the whole process, and part of learning how to laugh at yourself. That makes sense. I mean, eh,
yeah, absolutely. So I
yeah,
have a question now, a follow-up question. I mean, it is a greeting. It really is. It's a
right,
way it's like good morning, good afternoon, how are you doing?
exactly.
But do you have a recommendation for how someone should answer? I mean, you
Well,
give the joking answer of if you want them to go away, you tell them the truth.
yeah.
Is
Well,
that the best thing to do?
I didn't want to talk about it. So there's a site called Caring Bridge, which is for people with chronic diseases and chronic problems, and it doesn't cost anything.
Okay.
And I put blogs up there, and I started out by 3 or 4 times a week. I'd write how things were going, and I always made fun and mad jokes in it, but made fun of myself and stupid things that I'd made mistakes about. Um, but that's what I did. It actually was the basis for my first book, Cancer Set Me Free.
Mhm.
And but CaringBridge is a wonderful site. They have wonderful resources for you. Now you can write it yourself, or your caregiver can write it for you. But it's kind of cathartic if you write it by yourself, and because you can tell everybody now that I really don't talk about that much, but I write on CaringBridge every week. And if you're interested, here it is, and you can have the site just for people who ask permission for it, or you can have it wide open. And
Perfect.
it's really, really a wonderful thing because I didn't want to talk to everybody about it. And so I had more people who were curious about my condition than I clearly wanted to talk to. And so there are well over 100 people who've been on that site for over, 17 years. And, I don't write there as much as I used to because I write books now. And, but it's a wonderful way of talking to people. Um, but again, I want to go back to the question you asked a minute ago about quality of life. When you think about people with cancer, you think about the barca lounger or the lazy boy where they're sitting there and they don't get out. They don't get up because they have no energy. The minute you get the energy back, okay, it's just life changing because, you know, you can go do things. So if you're a teenager, I met a young lady who the brain Cancer Research Foundation, uh, you know, she has the energy of everything. That's what helped her with the energy issues. And she still went on dates and everything. She's now just gotten engaged. But she had a normal life, as normal as you can have it, having to have chemo and surgeries. But, when she wasn't recovering from a surgery, she was doing everything. And if you got the quality of life right, you can spend time with your grandchildren. You can spend time with your spouse, your significant other. I mean, it just changes everything. And quality of life is the key to longevity. And celebrating life every day, knowing that it's a gift, just makes you whole.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Oh, Glenn, thank you so much. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for your books. Thank you for that resource that you shared about CaringBridge. That will be helpful for a lot of people, I'm sure. Is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
no, it's the only thing is when my new book comes out, it'll be out in May. Um, it's already you can already pre-buy it on Amazon, but just get the QR codes, pull the documents, the memos up, and circulate them. And if anybody thinks I've got something wrong, please, please, please let me know so I can fix it. Again, I'm not a physician. I've got a lot of practical experience, but I'm not a physician, and I've done a lot of research on this topics. But that doesn't mean I'm perfect. And you'll help me out a lot. Do me a huge favor if you send me corrections or experiences that uh, indicate that I'm off. Or that's the most important thing. But the second most important thing is please share with others your success in fighting this.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Glenn. I appreciate you talking with me today.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Glenn Sturm. He said, "Being diagnosed was the world-shattering shock that I needed to put things into perspective. Today, I invite our listeners who are going through their own world-shattering shock to take this opportunity to put things into perspective." See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.